No, well,
Oh,
It was
it should
immediately,
be this whole package.
right, and I got that.
Oh, okay.
it was immediately following the email I sent with the governor's most recent declaration.
I can help you out, Dave, if you need some help.
All right, it's 6:30. I'm going to call the village board meeting of Tuesday, March 17th to order. Before we do roll call, I'm notifying everybody I'm suspending the rules of Robert's Rules of Order for this meeting, so we're in compliance with our village ordinance. Roll call, please.
Trustee Zander.
Here.
Trustee Francois.
Here.
Trustee Lucius.
Here.
President Langfeld.
Here.
Trustee Sorensen.
Here.
Trustee Kilgore.
Here.
And Trustee Grossman.
Here.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone to address the village board on any issue not on the current agenda. Please observe the time limit of 3 minutes. While the village board encourages input from residents, it may not discuss or act on any issue that is not duly noticed on the agenda.
We will have one from Mike Wolmer in regards to Robert's Rules of Order.
Thank you. I know you addressed it there, what have you. The first thing I wanted to say is thank you for being here. Current events seem to be being redefined by the minute right now, and I think it's important to thank you guys for all being here, guys, non-gender specific, for being here. Too, and I just did want to say something. I didn't see it per se on the agenda of Robert's Rules of Order. I do think that it would be a good idea to reconsider that in the future. They do allow for a very, very good and efficient meeting process, and I think it does the community a service to mind those rules absent of any better in this country. Thank you.
Just so you know, we hopefully will have them in by May. There's a draft that I have sent out to a couple members already, so we are working on it.
Good, yeah. They don't need to be perfect.
No, I agree. All right. Tim, do you want anything? Okay. All right, we'll go to report village officers. It has been one busy week so far. The League of Municipalities has been having conference calls throughout the week. I know the Commission on Elections have had conference calls, so Bill and I have been on a number of them. It's very interesting how other cities and villages are dealing with this. There's a lot of confusion out there. At least this last one from the governor did some exemptions. When they came down with the 50, it really threw a lot of people into a panic somewhat because of not exempting some of the state statutes that we're required to follow. And they're counter to what these emergency declarations have been. So I think a lot of them have been worked out. Obviously, it's a big issue right now. What we're planning to do is move out of the village hall for our meetings, either the fire department or the library, to give us more room so we can have good distancing. This last one, it appears that from the attorneys from the league, it looks like government meetings like this are exempt from the 10-person rule. Obviously, you're looking at cities. There's a number of cities that have over 10 alders or trustees. So to keep things functioning, so that was a big one. The big one that right now is on the table is the election that's coming up in April. There's all kinds of discussion if it should be moved, postponed or kept. And I would say today, if you looked at the voting on there, it seemed like 2/3, mostly smaller villages and cities, wanted to continue. Some of the larger cities are asking or hoping to postpone just due to the numbers that they get and the concern that a lot of the poll workers are in that high risk area. So that has thrown a loop to a lot of people. Some of the villages have done very creative stuff. Some have closed their libraries, so they're shifting their library employees, getting them trained, and they will be doing the poll work. So there's a lot of outside the box thinking going on with that. I would imagine today it looks like the league is going to try to get postponed the due date of mailed in absentee ballots. That's supposed to be April 2nd is the deadline. The registration by email or mail is tomorrow, so they want to extend that, because that would all put people inside. So there could be a lot of things happening in the next 3 to 7 days. So we will try to keep everybody abreast on that, and clearly that will have some ramifications. Right now, people are just looking for that 15-day, end of the month, middle of April. I think we do really start having to look at taking this probably to the end of summer. I mean, it would not shock me if these things, this emergency stays in place until then, so we have to really kind of start planning ahead so we're not doing crisis management. And that's something we can discuss later on. I guess that's all I have for now, because we'll be talking more about it on the agenda. Any?
Mine is, as we know, everything shut down, so the chamber was to have their banquet on Thursday night at Hilltop, that's canceled. I'm sure trout days and a lot of that stuff we'll be talking about, I'm sure a lot of that stuff will end up being canceled, so we'll keep you posted.
All right. Bill?
Just quickly, so the issue in regards to 1861 London Drive and assessment, that has settled and we received an order to dismiss today. We should start planning for the open book and border review for assessments. That's come up again, and so aligning that with what we've done in the past, generally had that before a village board meeting on that Monday. So right now, I'll tentatively schedule it for that unless you have any objections, just feel free to email me.
Okay, when were you thinking of doing that?
So it would be for the April meeting.
I don't, if this is still going on, how can we expect people to come here?
I can ask questions.
Can we move it to May?
Yeah, we can.
I think we should just go ahead and move it to May. I think that one is just cutting it too close to what people are talking about, I'm hopeful that it'll end by April 15th, but I don't know. I mean, I guess it'll really depend on how fast we can do this.
I can ask the question about how long we can prolong. If you
Okay.
remember last year, we prolonged it.
Yeah, we did, and that was too long,
Right.
but it doesn't make sense to do all the advertising for it, and then we're back down to where they want everybody to be locked in their homes for 15 days.
Do we have enough trustees that are trained?
We do.
Okay.
We do. So currently it's Jay and myself.
Okay.
Which would be, I would be a member on that board of review.
Yep.
So we have at least 2. This is a new cycle, so I need to get a new training material if any of you are interested in.
I've done it before, it's like, do you want to do it again?
Yeah, we should try to get a few more, just in case some of us get hit.
I do one,
It's not that bad a training.
No, it's not. Especially if they do it online.
Oh, really, Lee?
Well, I did it, I've done it.
Yeah.
Because you just sort of sit and listen, and I said, yeah, I did that.
So with that being said, we did order from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, Municipal Officials 101, which is a workbook and a DVD. And so if you want a refresher on that, let me know, I can get that to you. And I think that's all I have for right now.
All right. Any report from any other trustee? Kevin?
I'd just like to take a moment to thank Bill for all your efforts. lot going on right now. There's been a lot going on since you started. But there's certainly a lot going on lately, and thanks for watching that. Jay, I didn't know you were involved in a lot of those meetings, so thank you as well for putting the extra time in.
Bill?
Library board just met prior to this board, and the library is officially closed now to at least April 6th, as will the rest of the libraries under the South Central library system. Are all closed now. There was only 3 that were remaining open. Now everybody's closed based off of the Wisconsin State emergency declaration that went out today. Also, we passed a epidemic health emergency policy for the library, which basically allows the director the ability to keep staff on, send staff home, maintain, what the director needs to maintain to keep the library functioning, even though it's closed, to keep that functioning moving forward. So that was passed by the library board this evening.
Sarah?
Just want to update about the parks. We have got a really good response on the playground. We're talking about, I'm referring to the playground at Glacier Ridge Park, Dinosaur Park?
Glacier Valley.
Glacier Valley.
Is that the zone grant?
So we could not meet this week because we didn't have a quorum. So Mike Axon was gonna put together something to present to this board because, regarding funding for that project, as far as meeting the timeline and getting some guidance from the board as to how to distribute or appropriate use of the fund balance for parks, so that that project doesn't get completely stalled up. So he's gonna prepare something for us.
Did you want to say something again, Kevin? Oh. Anything else? All right, we will go to general business. Discussion and possible action on the village response to the coronavirus. Bill, where do you want to start with this?
So I just want to first give an update on what we're doing here at Village Hall. Things are moving pretty quickly here, and so things are changing consistently. In fact, I was writing the memo on this to send out to you. The executive order came in from Governor Evers making that change. So in regards to Village Hall, we continue to be open normal business hours. We have let some staff go home due to the hardship with childcare and then symptoms of being sick. So not necessarily the coronavirus at this point, but we're taking the stance that if you are starting to feel that way, we want you to get out of here, make sure you're clear before you come back. We are receiving a ton of absentee ballot requests by mail, and that's what we are encouraging. The Wisconsin Elections Commission, Dane County, all united on that front, and that we are hoping that a lot of voting can be done through mail-in absentee voting. That being said, we will still be open here for in-person absentee voting, and that goes up until April 3rd, I believe.
Bill, what does that look like? I'm sorry, can you explain what in-person absentee voting is?
Yeah, so you can come in, you can register in person, and you can vote the ballot in person here. When what we do is we set you up in the back room here so you can mark your ballot. That then ballot gets put into an envelope, sealed, certified, signed off on, and then we hold that until election day.
Oh, until election day.
Yep.
Yeah, I already voted.
And what does that do? When is the last time that somebody can do that?
That is up till, I believe, 5 o'clock, April 3rd.
Oh.
I thought it was second they were talking about today on the conference.
April 2nd is the last time to request it, I believe.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we have to have a day to try to get that ballot to them, and then it's their responsibility of
Okay.
getting it back to us before election day.
But we should try to encourage as many people as possible to do that.
What is the village doing to encourage people?
We have it on our website, and there's a number of press releases that have gone out from the Wisconsin Elections Commission.
Yeah.
All of this is short, as far as timeline. The direction to go this route actually came out from the Wisconsin Elections Commission on Sunday. So we had from Sunday until Wednesday to try to get as much information as we could out. As Jay had said earlier, tomorrow at midnight is the last that they're able to register online. So in order for them to absentee vote or request to vote online, they have to be registered. So that's a big deal.
So if you are already registered, you can show up here until April 3rd.
You can come here to register too.
But you have to register by tomorrow.
No,
Online.
online.
Online. Yeah.
Right now, we are encouraging that if it's not a pressing issue, to call us or to email us. We have that on our website and on Facebook, although we remain open. We're trying to create that separation so that we're keeping people safe. We can have more discussion on that, officially going that route or not. Currently, we are encouraging that.
Well, yeah, I think we should talk about, because there's a couple things that other villages are doing. One was they have in their voting area, they've marked out lines of 6 feet. So let's say they can get 10 people in. Anybody over 10, they wait in the parking lot, and then they let them, so there's a control mechanism. That's another option out there. And then someone brought up there's statute allows curb line voting, but I have no idea how that works or what equipment we need. But again, that's maybe something we have 3 weeks we could look into, because I've never even heard of that before.
Yeah, so that's curbside voting.
Yeah.
It's where you sit in a vehicle and you have
Go to the Kilburn.
provide the ability for them to vote.
But do you have a machine out there that they watch you put their ballot in? I mean, how does that
No,
work?
it's just marking the ballots. So
Oh.
you provide the ballot, they mark it, and then you put it in an envelope, seal it.
Oh, I see.
So nothing at this point is getting run through any
It's
tab.
almost like absentees here, except for it's the day of it, you come to your car, or you come to their car. Kind of.
I think Jay's talking about absentee, curbside absentee
Oh,
voting.
yeah, right.
And
For
so,
the payout.
we're not talking about the day of yet.
Oh, I thought
We're
it was
talking
the day of.
about, yeah.
Well, I thought they were talking about the day of.
They are talking about curbside voting for the day of too.
Yeah.
So just kind of a disclaimer here, they're talking about everything, every possibility that there might be out there, including postponing, suspending the election. And so there's a lot of conversation around this issue, because you have technicians and practitioners like clerks, and then you have policy and philosophical thinking on, one person, one vote, the ability to vote, and the issue goes on and on and on. And I think right now, Wisconsin Elections Commission has come out and said, hey, we're keeping with the April 7th election. So as soon as we hear more on that, we'll put that information out as best we can. This is a huge, huge topic right now.
Is this something that the village defers to the Wisconsin Election Commission for a decision on?
Yeah, we have to follow the direction of the Wisconsin Election Commission.
Only on if the election happens or not.
Right.
How we run the actual election, we do have a lot
But
of
as far as
power.
the actual dates, like
Yes,
if the date
yeah.
were to be postponed, whatever is decided by that.
Yeah, we have no say in that. Kevin?
You said how we run it is a choice by the village, right? We have some options,
Yeah.
how we run it. What are those options we're looking at? I mean, I heard curbside, I heard, this. I mean, right now is the time to start planning for this. So what is our suite?
Well, there's some caution on that, because
Okay.
there's guidance and direction that Wisconsin Election Commission puts out.
Sure.
And from there, we need to work within the confines of that.
So we should still, I think it would make sense to play some what-if games here.
Mhm.
So we're ready for what comes. If they make this call in a week, are we back here in a week doing the same thing, trying to scramble? So,
Correct, and so, what we're trying to do as an office here in regards to elections, we're exploring a lot. We've got as far as saying, contingency planning. What happens if on April 6th, April 4th, fire station is locked down, for whatever reason? And, you know, what is the contingency there? And so, we are thinking about those things, making sure that, people are able to get their vote in. As far as specifics about, you know, how they can vote, absentee, where they can vote in regards to that. You know, currently, and historically, the villages has had walk-in absentee voting here at Village Hall. I know cities like Madison have it elsewhere at the library. So there's some questions about how do we do that, and then how do we manage personnel to do that. And so that's something that we continue to track through. I don't have an answer for you yet.
No, but I think the other thing that I would like seeing is we should really be contacting our poll workers unless they've already been done, to make sure they're comfortable in coming in. Because that's was one of the big topics. And like I say, some of the villages have just said, we're using regular staff to do it.
Correct.
Because some of them would be laid off anyway, so.
And we're definitely thinking that too. That is a huge concern. I mean, that amongst other things, envelopes, huge concern right now. There's a shortage.
Shortage of envelopes?
Shortage of envelopes. Because every time you mail a ballot, you mail one out and you stamp one so that you can get one mailed back to you too. And so, we are short on that. The next time I'd be able to get envelopes in, will be Thursday. Dane County is Friday. You know, so everyone's kind of feeling this crunch right now. But on the part of poll workers, we've been discussing that for a long time, before even this issue came up, and having enough trained workers, first of all, then workers who are willing and able to work versus, you know, even if they're willing to work, are we going to put them in harm's way? And then if push comes to shove, we have some bailout for the worst situation on the day of, who can we pull from staff as a bare bones working for polls. And so, again, you kind of run into, because of the limited staff that we have, to run an election, you need at least 7 for a shift. And so, how do you balance that with, you know, everyday work and operating the village if you know, we still keep going? So that's something that we're looking into currently, and we're hoping to try to fill some of that with some of the programs that have closed down, or sharing staff with other departments.
What is like the last day that you could train them to do it? Because there's a training that.
Yeah, I can, give me an hour and I can train them.
Yeah, it's an hour.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
No, because I'm just thinking a lot of people may be losing their jobs in the next week or so, or be laid off, but they might do it, yeah. Mhm. But, okay.
And if the village staff step up and do it, and they're not essential staff, are they getting paid their normal hourly rate?
Yeah, I would believe that they are, because you'd have to pay them the higher of the.
Higher of the two?
Yeah, you're just changing, to me, I would look at you just changing their assignment. Instead of wood chipping, they're working the poles.
Well, that, people
Yeah.
might wonder, am I getting paid the election
Right, no.
rate, or am I getting paid my regular rate?
We don't have elections, yeah.
Unless anybody else has any questions, I guess we're gonna kinda wait and see what happens with this, but.
There is a meeting with the Elections Commission tomorrow, at 4 o'clock, so more to come. Like I said, these things are changing every day, so, we're getting, guidance and webinars and, you know, from each of these organizations almost daily. But we are, trying our best here to work within the confines of what we're being directed to do. And I'm not the only one who's expressing frustration, and you see it across all municipalities, in trying to, administer this election this time of year.
Well, I think there are a couple things that we have control over, and that is, there's still 24 hours of calling in and registering for getting a mail-in ballot. And people can come here and do in-person voting up until April 3rd.
Yep.
So, I mean, those two things, I guess, messaging and getting that out would be maybe the best possible thing that we can do. A slow trickle of people is gonna be better than everybody showing up on election day morning.
So,
And we should encourage amongst all of our
Yeah.
friends and people that we know within the village and even outside the village.
And Dane County and the state have been pushing that hard
Yeah.
since yesterday.
so just to give you an example, yesterday, I think we had about 40 people
Wow.
request for absentee voting. Today, we had about 75.
Oh,
So we're at the very beginning of it. I imagine that we're gonna continue to get, people requesting for ballots. And I believe the turnout the last general election, I think we were at about 2,500. So we're ramping up pretty quickly here. I imagine that it's going to be a consistent, and not trickle, but people coming in here for absentee ballots.
do you have the staff you need to handle that here?
Right now, we're okay. I think as we get busier, we may, need more, assistance. And so, we're also talking about potentially bringing in election workers to help.
Okay,
Some of that.
great. Sarah?
People are coming here to pick up the ballot and leave and mail it in, but they also have the option of coming here, casting their vote and leaving, without the need for envelopes and.
No, you need the envelope, because that's,
Oh, to put it
you
in
fill it out, you
boxes.
put it in the envelope, and then the clerk checks your ID, and then signs that you were the signature of it.
They can't take a ballot with them. They can come in and request a ballot be sent.
Oh, gotcha.
Because they have an address that's assigned to them in the Wisconsin Election Commission, system, and we need to mail it to that address.
Or they can just come here
Or
and
they
do
can just
it.
come here and do it here. Put it in, we'll certify it and leave it.
And the ones that you've been receiving the last 2 days have been requests for mail?
I came in,
We have both.
yeah, I came in yesterday and Renee's desk was like, no. Yeah, and my wife came in today, she said it was a lot on her desk also. So people are coming in as well as requesting finding the labor.
But tomorrow is the last day you can have it mailed to you.
No, the last day you can register.
If you're not.
For the
registered
election.
Well, that day you can register online. You can still come in and register in person.
But if you're not a registered
But if you
voter,
want a ballot mailed to you, you can come in and get it, you can just ask for it anytime.
Yeah,
so that it gets back to you
there's
by
an
the third.
absentee ballot request form. We have it here, you can get it off the website, the Wisconsin Elections website. And you submit that with us from ID, and we send it out to you, or proof of residence, we mail that out to you.
Is there any way we can get signs that say, vote now? You know, do absentee?
Well, my only concern, I think that's a good idea, my only concern is we put it all out there, and then all of a sudden they postpone the election, so now there's even mass confusion.
What would
We-
happen for the people that already voted?
Well, see, that's the big debate. See that, and that's where state statute comes in, because those are only good for so long, that's why they open it at a time period. So if we move it to June or something, the question is, would they waive all those, or could people come and get their votes back? See, there's a lot of unknown, because we've never done it.
Georgia and Alabama are doing it today, right?
Well, Ohio moved, well, today Ohio moved it to June 2nd, so there's 5 now.
Other
that
states are
moved.
doing it, yeah, it's happening.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, you can do it, but we just have to clarify the rules to it. Go ahead.
So if we can kind of move away from the
Yeah.
election, keep going here, and we think there are a lot of questions out there still about elections, and I think it's gonna be clarified for the next couple of days here. We're starting to get into that crunch time. So going down my list here, public facilities continues to operate, normally at this point. Park and recreation, all their programs have been suspended at this point. They continue to work here in the office and catching up on what they need to do in the office.
When you say suspend, are you talking about even all the summer programs?
No, all the current programs that are happening now, and they have a reassessment within the next week or so on where we are with the virus. So they will provide more update after that.
Can they also be keeping an accounting basis of, because obviously we budgeted revenues coming in, so I'd like us to keep track of what lost revenues we would have there. I'm not sure that's one that we would be able to recoup, but we should at least have the numbers.
What we expense and revenue. Because we won't have those expenses either.
What we said at payroll.
Yeah, we're not, at this point, we're not laying anybody off.
No, I know, but there's still something that, I mean, there could be supplies or whatever.
Oh,
we
sure,
do,
I see,
right?
yeah.
Right, but I think it was both ways.
We're all right, but you can't do true expenses because we're not laying off anybody at this point
Totally
right
agree,
now.
no,
So,
that's not what I'm talking about. I'm
Yeah.
talking about lost
yeah,
revenue.
the kids that we,
Lost of revenue.
Lost revenue, lost expenses because we didn't have.
right, yeah, that's fine.
So the police department obviously is still in service right now. They've gone away from any non-essential services, so things like department tours, citizen ride-along, probation, parole, appointments, fingerprinting is a large one. So they got away from that until they reassess it and say that we can bring it back. You just got the update in regards to the library from Trustee Brocius. Fire and EMS continue to operate. EMS have gone down to on a call, 2 people per call, and they're doing some basic separation there to make sure that if they go into a resident with a residency with someone that's infected, they're containing that. Fire's working with them, and so they both and police have, so there's a national shortage on personal protection equipment, and there's been talk at Dane County Emergency Management with Wisconsin Emergency Management about working with the feds to get into that federal supply chain. That's been consistent. I know that they're having a really hard time with that right now all across the nation. Northwest Dane Senior Services, I believe that building is currently closed, but they will still open up for people to if they knock in or if they set up by appointment. I believe they're still serving meals at this point, but they're working closely with Dane County on services to seniors. In the business community, the report back from Tara at the chamber was that they're working through this process, especially now with bars and restaurants closing except for takeout. That was one of their big concerns, and it happened. Just know that there are small business administration loans out there at 0% or low interest that are available to assist in these situations. And then obviously schools are closed down. I believe they opened up today for students to get their Chromebooks, and the most recent order extended the time that they would be closed down. So there's been a lot of information coming in and going out, as you can imagine. Dane County Emergency Management, I'm involved in a conference call with them as well as fire, ambulance, and PD. We're meeting almost every other day on this, and then every other day we're sitting in that league of municipalities. So there's a lot of communication right now going back and forth between local agencies, state agencies, nonprofit organizations, interest groups, etc. And so we continue to try to keep those communications open. So with that being said, the next thing that I wanna try to address here, and we can do it in two different discussions, is one, in regards to Village Hall, is the status quo currently, what we're doing now, is that sufficient? I'd like to get some direction from the Village Board on that. And then second, have a discussion on future, Village Board meetings. I know we had said, initially here that we would move the meetings, and then talk about, what are essential items and what are not essential items, just to make sure that everyone's clear on that, and so that we can get some direction as far as setting agendas for the next couple of months, if needed.
So you want, well, I think one thing we've talked about is moving obviously the meeting spot here. We believe if we can use the fire station, we can give a lot more distance from each other and from be able to bring in more people to come at meetings. I can tell you from all the discussion, open meeting law, they are not really eager to modify them at all. There are some places that are looking to try to go all electronic, but it's been very, very clear, if you do that, it can't be one way. You have to have a mechanism where the public can respond back to you. And like I say, there are options out there, but for us to try to put something like that and buy all that equipment, it's just not gonna happen. So we have to look at basically trying to keep these as short and to the point, and we're looking at the fire station, and if that doesn't work, the library, just to give us more room, but we have to meet. That is a for sure thing. We cannot function. Later on, we'll be talking about this declaration of emergency, but there's still things that this board has to meet on, so we have to be able to do that. Bill?
So we just went in the library tonight, and how Pam had the library set up was not only we were at our own table, but the tables were at least 6 feet apart from each other, which left about the other half of the room available, so less space than what we currently have right here. So I think the library would, although it's a good solution, I think it would be a secondary solution. I think the fire station affords more room. I think the Legion actually probably affords maybe even more room, but I don't know.
We wouldn't be exempt on there if we met at the Legion.
Yeah.
So
Because it's not a community center.
They're very-
government meeting
Right.
place.
Yeah, you have to, that's really odd.
Yeah.
They're trying to change that where you can move outside government building, but right now it's gotta be in a government
So I
building.
think the fire station, in my opinion, would probably be
Oh, I agree.
the best solution.
Curious
Plus, it's
about
close to
that,
my
one
house.
comment about the fire station, and something, part of reading through this whole thing today, about the fire station being the emergency operations center, and the fire department does not want to have meetings there. Didn't I see something in there?
Yeah, so the fire has expressed some concern, and about, public meetings in that space, voting in that space, should someone who is sick come through, and what that would mean to the whole fire station. Now, there's some questioning as to, how long would the virus be able to survive? How quickly could you clean up the facility? How does it impact other services? They are all in different rooms, but the concern is people walking through the building. And so, that's some items that we need to address here, and give some guidance on in regards to, one, really, what can we do to limit some of the exposure within that building, to try to answer some of these questions that the chief has. And then two, even if we decided to move elections from that building, are we able to at this point with guidance from Wisconsin budget. So, so there's some questions on that.
So, it's not a good solution, but it is it is a idea anyway. The way to limit that exposure would be to have more personnel there with wipes, wiping down voting areas, wiping down machines, wiping down the handrails, you know, on a consistent basis throughout the entire election process. You know, it takes staff to do that. We have the staff apparently that we, you know, that we made, you know, we have the library, we got public works, we got office staff here that could possibly do that. But you know, I would even volunteer to do that, but I can't this election. If you're
Yeah,
running heaven.
So there's, so
Yeah,
that's a good point that you bring up, because there's different work responsibilities, because you have to be a resident to be an election judge.
Right.
However, for those cleaning responsibilities, potentially we could have someone that, you know, does not live in the village for that. So, just some ideas going
Sure.
around there.
And I think we could change the design. I mean, I think the design, how they have people coming in through one door and then going out the back, we could make it where everybody has to go
Out from the back door.
from the back door, so they're not contaminating any hallways, you're coming right in. We'd have to redesign that room, but you could clearly have people come in and out of the same door, and that gets you right to the room. So the only place that really needs to be cleaned would be
Right.
that one room.
Right.
I mean, I think there's some design things that we could do to lower the risk.
You probably have to have the bathrooms available too.
Well, the bathrooms are right off. We could do that if someone needed to do that, yeah. You know, we could still tape that off, you know, on each side of that one hallway,
I would
so.
even feel more comfortable people coming in from the back door and leaving through the front door.
I'm thinking both, I mean, it's a convenient way to getting people through, but,
But you lose that separation of people. I mean, plus, if you have people coming in the way they're currently doing it, you're gonna have, typically, we've had long lines out the door, right? If you have people coming from the outside to the back door and they're just leaving, then you're not gonna have those long lines standing in the hallway waiting to vote.
no, they'd be standing out in the parking lot, which is by far better.
Exactly, that's my point, but they leave through the front door instead of passing each other.
Oh,
You see what I'm saying?
yeah, I see what you're saying. I'm trying to reduce
I understand.
the area that has, because that hallway is pretty close. And, you know, the administrative room for the chiefs and their, one of their conference rooms and stuff are right there, so.
Right.
To me, if we want to reduce the exposure, have people go in and out the same.
I think that's tough.
You know what, most polling places in Madison have one door that you go in
Really?
and back out. It's very rare that you have a building that you have the luxury.
It's a single door they have there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because they're using our community rooms, and we have a door to the outside, but they don't send them outside, they send them back through the lobby.
All right.
Through the libraries and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I
If
mean,
if you have suggestions or comments or for setting that up, send them to me.
Okay.
So, I mean, we don't have to go
Right.
into the specifics here, but, you know, we can definitely, rearrange that room, to make it work. And so, you know, although we think that we may receive a lot of people who are interested in voting that day, I don't think it's gonna be as much as previous years.
Should we move it to the library?
No.
There's a lot of responsibilities that come with moving a polling place. You
Oh.
have to set it up beforehand, and then, there's a whole long list of what you need to do. I think right now, currently, the only facilities that they allowed for you to change administratively are, like clinics or hospitals or medical facilities, potential medical facilities that they're voting in.
Nursing homes.
Nursing homes.
Yeah.
Nursing homes and assisted living facilities are currently closed off. So there's a special process that we have to go through to get them absentee ballots right now too.
As far as the village hall, would it make sense to put like somebody over in that area or in this area, so people didn't always have to walk in there? Less bodies to walk all the way into the village?
As far as.
Like for your front
voting.
desk, like for Renee or something like that, if they would be more exclude themselves, so they're not somebody.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think right now, what we're doing is working.
Okay.
A lot of the people that we're getting right now are absentee voters, so, we can definitely, I think that's a good idea, have people standing out here if there's a long line to get them to vote. But, I think continuing to encourage that, if this is a non-urgent issue, give us a call or shoot us an email, and we can respond accordingly. And we are reassigning staff within Village Hall here to assist. So, for example, Katarina, Parks and Rec, today we have to work on election absentee stuff. So we're continuing to utilize our staff as we can see fit here.
Will anyone home work from home? I mean, we've been doing a lot of working from home.
Yeah, the position allows for it, and you'll see it in the continuation plan or continuity plan. There are certain positions that we believe would be able to work from home. Some issues come up with that as far as the extent of what they can do, laptops, computers, access to internet, access to email, and then some of these programs, Park and Rec Department, have their individual programs that they use. But not able to access that at home. So there are things that some staff will need to come in for, but we continue to plan for the worst case scenario, in that if, just paying attention to what's happening on the coast, where they're quarantined in place, if that should happen here, what can we do to continue to at least operate at the minimum?
The other thing that I thought was interesting, and we should probably think about it, is find a partner with all our essentials, like they were talking about the wastewater treatment plant operator. Some of them have deals with other communities. If ours would get sick and be quarantined, theirs would come and help make sure ours keeps running. Have we reached out and found partners in some of those?
I have not heard of that yet with Jerry and his crew. It's definitely something that we continue to work on, and something that I can discuss with him. We do have a number of mutual aid agreements out there in regards to essential services and equipment.
Okay.
But as far as personnel, I don't think we have that yet.
We should probably identify at least those areas that we might not have redundancy on, and make sure we have someone in mind.
And I do know that the EMS and the state EMS association is kind of working with, we're getting that idea across, so that someone stay in Middleton or want to come over and assist us if we need to. We just haven't done it on the water wastewater side yet.
Okay.
And then the other part of that discussion you wanted to bring up was keeping meetings to only pertinent information to keep the village running.
Essential items. So
Essential,
we're still going to have to pay bills. We're still going to. There's going to be some items that will come up, namely, providing reports to DNR so that we are in compliance with permits, etc. We have a large one that we, in regards to some litigation, that we should still keep going, because that grant process isn't waiting for us. So the elementary school expansion, which they put in a conditional use permit for, and they have a deadline on getting that completed before the beginning of the school year. So there are things that are coming up on the agenda that I think we need to keep, and at the minimum get those items through.
What about like the 3 subdivisions that are going in? Can those be postponed? Or are those
Depends.
time sensitive as well?
So, for example, the creek crossing one. We have a, public hearing on April 9th. That's at the library currently. So I still need to find out from CARC whether or not they're having public meetings, because I need to be prepared for that. But, you know, that in itself has a timeline. Now, does it mean that we, you know, if we don't have a public meeting, does that mean that we have to start the application process over again? I don't know. You know, Scenic Valley, I think most of that we've worked through, at least the permitting process for that. Right now, for that, we're just waiting for a letter of credit from them, and then they're set to get started this April here. We're holding some building permits here until we see further proof from them that they can move on. But, I mean, that one is pretty set to move forward. And then Sundance, the one on Brewery Road. Right now, we're waiting to meet with the township on that, and they currently have us on their agenda for April 20th, but who knows if that meeting is going to be held at this point. There's not a huge rush on that right now, I would say. Out of the 3 developments, that one probably has the least urgency at this moment. But that one also has a deadline in that preliminary plot has been accepted for it, and they have 3 years to submit a final plot, and we're into year 1.5 right now, or coming up on year 1. So yeah, I mean, we'll continue to work it, and a lot of this depends on, you know, how long this virus, you know, continues to be an issue, and then what other fires are going to need to be put out between now and then. Because right now, I can tell you, absentee ballots and this emergency management is taking up the majority of my time.
So 1909 already came to planning, but they still have to come to the village board yet before they can do anything.
They actually have to come back to the planning commission.
Oh, they have to come back to plan too?
So they came for a concept review. So the next step is to submit for a general plan development and implementation plan, that which requires a public hearing. And so the question is whether that's essential or not at this point, considering that they can't, under the new declaration, I mean, they can't be open anyways. So
Right, but they could work and they
They
could
could work.
because they got a wedding coming up, so they need to.
I know, but we really have to screen what is absolutely necessary, because we have to just, even though today it seemed like part of it, the first part, the attorneys felt that we were exempt from the 10, but later on, it got really confusing where they were thinking we weren't, and we had to wait for people outside, you know. So we're already, right now, if you look, we're at the max. So if one more person showed up, they're saying, some people are saying you close your doors. I question that, if that's really the intent of the open meeting, is everybody should be able to go. Some of them are hanging their hat on, well, if it was a fire code, you wouldn't be doing that. So that part, I think we have to be very cautious of, and hopefully things will be clarified as we move. But right now, I think we need to just do, for at least the next 2 weeks, we need to really just do what absolutely needs to be done to keep us running. You know, the April meeting, or if we need to schedule another one in between there, you know, early in April when these things get lifted and stuff. But, you know, we've got to follow these declarations, and the problem was public hearings, a number of them are claiming they're not part of a board meeting. That's a separate meeting, so the 10 people rule applies.
Regardless of whether or not it's the rule, I think the whole point is that we're just trying to be separate, right? So if we're following a rule or not following a rule by the law, that's one thing, but if we're just being stupid, that's
Well,
all.
Kevin, I guess my point is, there's businesses out there and there's people that these decisions indirectly really hurt. So I don't know how many employees they run or how it's, so I do believe that. I think you have to balance the risk with what is out there and what the need is. So I know it's easy to say no one should meet and we should all be locked up, but that's affecting a lot of people right now. I agree with you, we can't do something stupid, but I don't think we all took an oath to help the village along, and this is part of the process, and sometimes we were probably taking a higher risk than the other citizens, but that's what we need to do. So I'm going to try to balance that, and certainly if there's things that you feel strongly about, please go through Bill, because the one thing I wanted them to change is this whole thing about roaming quorums and stuff. I'd like to be able to call you guys, send you emails and bounce things off you. We can't do that under the open meetings law because of the quorum type thing. So that would be very nice if they waived that part of it. I think that would make government work a lot better. But it really seemed like the attorneys do not want to even touch that part of it. So I hear what you're saying, but I want to also just remind everybody that these decisions we make not only affect the one person, but there's an indirect that can really hurt this community. And right now, there's a lot of people hurting right now with not having an income, not having insurance, not being able to pay things. So I just want to make sure we keep that in the balance of what we decide to do. But that can change too. If all of a sudden we have all the cases, we're the hot spot in Cross Plains, and we're locked down for 15 days in our houses, that's a different story, So we just gotta play it day by day, I guess, and just really keep track. And I believe the county and the state are really in my opinion, they're on top of it. The League of Municipalities have a direct contact to the governor's staff, and this is, you probably didn't keep track, but this last declaration was much better in giving exemptions and stuff to make it workable. When they threw the 51 out, it just threw everybody in a tailspin.
Well, there were exceptions in that rule as well.
Not very clear ones. There's a lot of confusion on that, especially I don't want to go over it again, but tons with the election.
Okay.
Tons with the election. But they exempted on the second one. Sarah?
So, clarification, item number 3, sub 2. Village Hall, utility and court payments to be made online or drop-off box. So maybe we should put something out, so people paying their water bill need to do it online? Is, like, there's not gonna be anyone here to process those?
No, there will be, so, I mean, what we're doing now, is we're keeping the village hall open. We're encouraging them to pay online because we have a way to pay online. We're dropping it off at the lockbox out front instead of coming in. Obviously, if they have cash, if they need change, they can obviously come in. We're just encouraging them at this point to have the exact payment amount.
As far as like mailing in your bill and your payment?
They can, yeah.
There'll still be staff right now to process that, or people should do the online? I guess.
Well, I guess what we're asking people is not to have, so mail it, do it online, or drop it in the box. We're trying, that social distancing is what we're trying to do.
That's the clarification I was looking for, like,
Yes.
if you mail it in, is someone still here to
Yes,
process?
we're keeping staff.
We're still keeping staff at this point, I mean, until, and in my, what I tend to do here in this situation is, find out what the reaction from Dane County Emergency is, and then be able to follow that, just because things are changing so quickly here. Being flexible to be able to react quickly, but not overreacting at this point. And so, we do still currently have staff that are here, to be able to run Village Hall and other operations. But we're taking the precautionary steps of separation, letting people go home if they need, if we need so. So that's what we've done thus far. The question is, are we doing what you expect us to be doing, or are there some changes that you would like us to do?
And I guess right now, I think what we're trying to do is get people to voluntarily take these actions versus mandating them. I think that's kind of where we are in the steps right now. You know, we're letting the county and the state do the mandating. We're just trying to help along wherever we can to go along with those recommendations and have people voluntarily do it. And we are trying to update the website daily on this.
Yeah, doing a good job with that.
Yeah.
We're trying to keep,
Yeah.
on it. And so again, different municipalities are doing different things. I know, some municipalities are totally closing their doors, and then opening up just for absentee if they have to. But again, and in the action requested later, I'll be asking for some flexibility in being able to manage that as we get instruction and as we get information from Dayton County. But we'll talk about that later. Okay.
Any other questions?
So, next on my list here, you'll see in your packet some information about leave policy. And currently, our employee manual does not necessarily cover emergency closings. And so as part of that, you can see in section 4 here on page 4, the personal leave policy, it does reference emergency leave, but throughout the whole employee manual, it doesn't define emergency leave. And since I'm proposing to add in language about emergency closing and leave associated with emergency closing, I'm recommending that we strike the reference to emergency leave in that section because I don't think it applies. And then in regards to emergency closings, I can just go ahead and go through that proposal. So basically it's to provide a plan for employees in the event of emergency closing due to inclement weather or any other emergency situation. As a general practice, the Village of Cross Plains makes every effort to maintain its normal schedule of operations. The Village of Cross Plains may close all or parts of operation only in cases of extreme emergency caused by impassable roads, restricted visibility, violent weather, energy loss, or other conditions seriously endangering the health and safety of employees and or general public. And so we talked about reporting to work, and that employees accept the responsibilities of getting to work, and then that if they don't report to work, they will not be paid, except that they can use their vacation time, leave time, comp time in some situations, to minimize their loss in wages. And then directs the responsibility of closing the village to in the village facilities and operations to the village administrator and or the village board. The announcement will be made through the village administrator or the village board, through the village administrator to the department staff, department heads, and then department staff. And then we will also provide that information on the website and on the front door of the village hall. Section E talks about if and when the village does close, and employees are not required to report, we're proposing that it be treated as a holiday for the employees that are not required to report. These would be only in extreme circumstances. Essential employees or personnel will still be required to report, and if they are working on that day, essential personnel would be police department, public facilities, and then anyone that the village administrator may authorize or designate to be an essential. So, for example, in my capacity, I am the designated emergency operations director or emergency management director, and so I would consider myself an essential position. In a situation where there may be a lot of financing involved for that shorter time, the finance director may be an essential employee. So just having that flexibility, but not limiting it only to the village administrator and giving the board the authority to, keeping the authority of the board at that level. For those essential personnel who are required to work during the closure, then they would be paid as if they are working on a holiday. And then for personnel who desire to leave early, non-essential employees, that they will only be paid for the time that they actually work and or they can use the benefits that they have. And then we give an option for them to make up some lost time within that work week. Anything beyond that work week, I think we start dealing with overtime and or other personnel issues. So that's my first shot at it. Trying to get something out there in case something does happen. We currently do not have such a policy in our employee manual. So I'm all ears right now.
Bill, then Lee, and then Sarah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Pick one you anyway.
Oh,
I'll try to
Kevin.
think of something.
Go ahead, Bill.
So, I'd like to define, I like this, by the way, I think this is great, and, you know, and we have budgeted for people to work throughout the year, and I think we should pay them if, you know, if we possibly can, and should be able to. What I would like to see defined a little bit better is reporting to work, because reporting to work can either be reporting to a location, or, as we talked earlier, working from home. And you may say to one of your directors, you may say one of your staff, you know, for today, you can work from home, which would still be reporting to work, but it's not reporting to this location.
Are there any suggestions as far as language, or do we want to say specific, so reporting to work shall mean workers, any works associated with your
Which is duties within the village, you know.
I have Lee, then Kevin.
Okay, so none of this exists now, that's what you're saying. None of this kind of procedure really exists for our employees to figure out what happens when you can't or don't come to work. That's what you're saying right now, right?
correct?
None of them does, okay. It's interesting, because, I mean, we're doing this in the context of this pandemic, and yet the kind of things you're talking about don't seem to be reflected in this. This is talking more about snowstorms or tornadoes or floods or some, you know, some natural disasters, more than the issue that's kind of made this come to the surface. So I wonder, I don't get that, but.
So it's true that the pandemic kind of brought this to a front, but I think this policy was missing in our general employee manual in the first place. Not only are we seeking a solution to the current issue that we're dealing with, but even in any kind of emergency down the road, we want to have this policy available so that it's clear to all employees, or anyone that would be interested in being employed by the village, that in the situation of emergency, it comes down to written policy, not at the discretion of, say, a department head or village administrator or village board at the time. But you know, generally, the way that it's operated now, and I can't speak to the disaster in 2018 and how personnel was managed at that time, but I would feel a lot more comfortable as an emergency management director, knowing that when an emergency strikes, I can rely on a policy to go to for personnel matters, and I don't have to make some of those tough decisions that a policy can you know, answer. Nor come back to the village board every single time there's a personnel issue. And so that's really the reason for it. And Lee, your question, yeah, it does spell out severe weather situations in there because those are the most common types and emergencies. However, we do have in there the language that states an emergency that affects health.
Condition seriously endangering the health and
Correct.
safety of employees.
Correct.
Okay,
So that's in the very
okay.
first, section 10A there. So we do try to cover it. Unfortunately, we can't cover, or don't know, potentially what could come in the future. So, we want to provide a policy that's broad enough to cover that.
Kevin?
All right. First question is just a yes or no. Has Paul reviewed this? Our attorney?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. Second one, 2 parts. Like to think organized, maybe quick, efficient. Is about approvals. I understand the village, you as the village administrator, first point is, should it say the emergency management coordinator or village administrator? Now here they're the same right now, but if they're the same, they may not be the same always, and we may want to recognize that. And then I guess my bigger point is, I could see a time when the village administrator may disagree with the village board on this declaring an emergency. And here it says the village administrator or the village board may call or cease non-essential operations of the village. I just wonder about the approval process there. That's still a little squishy for me, and I would like to either have it better defined and then give the authority to the village administrator or the emergency management contact, or leave it more with the board being able to make that decision.
Can I just comment? And then I think that's a good point. I personally think, because of how these come up short-term, trying to get the board together, I think we should give the power to the director, but then as soon as the board can back the approval of it or rescind it. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so then,
So,
yeah, so then what you're saying makes sense to me, and then this should reflect that
Yeah.
type of process.
that's how I would put it in.
Okay. That, I'm much better with that.
Yeah. Any other comments from anybody? So Bill, what is the next step you want on this?
So, in order to keep things moving here, so I can definitely make those changes and
Okay.
then have Paul review them and then bring it back for the meeting next week.
Okay, everybody comfortable with that?
Okay, so you're not gonna, we're not gonna try to vote on it yet tonight, just, we're comfortable letting you go ahead to finish this up, but like you said, get Paul
It needs to be
to
reviewed.
review it, and
That
then,
needs to be reviewed.
and then it would be passed in the next meeting.
Yeah, this is, so
Okay.
I wanted you to see this. And so so the question comes up between now and then if something should happen in general under the authority of emergency management. I'm gonna try to stick with this as much as possible in the spirit of what we discussed tonight.
Right, and that'll fall under the next topic that we talked about.
Going back to your point, Kevin, do you want to use emergency management or do you want to use village administrator?
You sort of used them interchangeably, Bill, and I don't know which one. I guess.
I would go with the village administrator, because emergency management is a different declaration, and he becomes the director of that.
Right.
But I could see this, when we have a snowstorm, we don't declare necessarily an emergency. I think, to me, this comes under management of staff. He's the head guy of management of staff, so I think it should be village administrator, Kevin.
Well, what if the emergency is if poor Bill is not around? I mean, we're gonna talk about this next step, so we may need a tiering system.
Well, when he's not here, it should be I believe.
Or the backup is.
Yeah.
Right now,
if we
right
define.
now we have, on the next subject here and the continuity plan, we do have Mike slotted in there just because of his experience.
Right.
But it would fall onto whose responsibility it is. So these two documents play hand in hand.
Does this document need to reference that though, or not?
I don't think it does.
Okay, all right.
Because you could, you could easily appoint a different village administrator, or appoint whoever you deem, you know, in a situation where, you know, things have changed and we haven't updated the plan yet, you don't wanna, you know, reference the name of the plan when you can, you know, the board has done.
Okay, and see, you know, and what I think, when Bill's on vacation, there should be someone who's in charge when he's gone. So they take on their responsibility. Just like when the chief's gone, it's the lieutenant that's in charge, they take on the responsibility of the chief. So we should always have that, and I'm sure that's how they're built in.
Yeah, and another comment I wanna make, in regards to the separation of powers between emergency management and village administrator, if that position ever gets, this position ever gets split, is that in a situation where you're managing a crisis, you want that emergency director focused on operations and recovery. And you don't want them to worry about personnel matters, and so in that event, the village administrator is gonna be in a better position to deal with that.
Agreed.
And we don't wanna really say it's Mike, I mean, we wanna say it's Mike Jackson, we don't wanna say it's a parks person, because if Mike would leave, we might not necessarily be the parks person, I mean, it's a per person.
I would put in there the village administrator or his or her designee.
I
Then,
think-
because that's, when he's gone, someone is
Right,
designated, and that's how it should read.
right, I agree. But not.
Yeah, I think you're safe, just saying village administrator, because it's assumed that it should something happen to that person, whether it's an intern or it's a designee, they're gonna step into that role. So I don't think you need to get
Okay.
too much into the weeds there.
Lee?
I was going to say, this is very extensive. Was this something you brought with you from Arcadia, or?
This policy?
Yeah.
Or, no, this is not. So we have,
I mean, just wondering, I mean, it's pretty extensive and detailed and so on, and I just wondered if it was based on something you had from some prior experience or some outside source.
so I did a little bit of emergency management in Arcadia, but in my world, we like to copy other policies, things that are good policy and has been the standard, not only there, but you'll start to see other municipalities copy really good policy. And then taking that and then adjusting it to what we do here in the village. And so that's where this document came from.
So where did it come from?
A bunch of other communities.
A bunch of others, okay, all right.
Any other questions on this? Did you get what you needed, Bill?
Yeah, no, I have
Okay.
direction. So, the next item on my list here is in regards to the continuity plan. What we did here is, so I have, Dane County provided us with what they call pandemic planning annexes. And so I had each department head fill that out in regards to their specific department, who's next in line, should they get sick, who's third in line, should the second person get sick, contact information, PPE material, everything up and down the list. And from that document, put this document together, and this is also provided by Dane County Emergency Management. And so, in a situation where 10%, 25%, 50% of us are not able to report to work, to provide some structure, some written structure about who has the succeeding responsibilities. And so that's the goal of this plan. I do know that we don't necessarily at this point have the secondary and third information for EMS, fire, and library, and I had met with them this morning. They will be giving that to me, so we will be filling that in. But this is a reactionary and always changing document. And again, this is to work hand in hand with our emergency planning document, which we are currently working on. This doesn't replace it, it just simply allows us to know who is next in the succession plan to keep the organization working and moving forward.
Bill?
Next to each of the names, you have, for example, Mike Axon, you have his office number and extension, and then you have text out
Yep.
another number. Should that be a cell phone number or?
Yep, those are supposed to be cell phone numbers, and where you see the X's, they have not reported the cell phone they want to use yet.
Okay.
So some of us carry municipal phones, some of us are shared, meaning, that the village pays a portion of their personal phone. And so the question, and some of us use personal phones, because they're not issued, that position is not issued a municipal phone. So, and part of organizing all this, we need to have the most current cell phone number, obviously, in a situation where they need to be contacted, to our duties. So, yeah, so it's not by far a complete plan as far as contact information. We are currently working on it. Things are changing.
I think it's a very good document once it gets totally filled in. Exactly what we needed. Lee?
I will make one comment, because there's some complexity here. I made my living for over 20 years as a technical writer. And one of the first classes I took described a situation in which, maybe 50 years ago or so, there was a nuclear power plant in 3 Mile Island near Pittsburgh that broke down in some respect and had a lot of radiation leakage. And the reason why it broke down was because the operating manual was so complicated that nobody knew what to do in an emergency. So I want to make sure that these kinds of things don't get so complicated that you can't figure out what to do when you need to. I think this is probably pretty good, but want to kind of, wherever possible, make it as straightforward and simple as possible to say, if something happens, here's what we do. But I think this is a succession plan, and what I could see, the categories of situations are adequately identified, and so I think it's going to be all right, but it's unfortunately, you'll never know until you actually have to use it.
In the hope that we don't have to use it.
And what?
In the hope is that we don't have to use it.
Yeah, well, that's the point.
Right. Any other questions?
Better be prepared.
Absolutely. All righty. So you will complete the information on this,
Yep,
and then will you send it to all of us once it's completed? And I would imagine you'll have a yearly review of this document to make sure everything's up to date and make the changes, especially with the contacts.
correct.
There's nothing more frustrating than having a contact list that's outdated.
So the last item here, that I have on the list, is regarding a declaration of, local emergency. In conference with Dane County, this question had come up, previously. There are a number of other communities within the state that have already declared. Dane County just declared it, and you'll see a bunch of other villages and cities within Dane County start declaring. And this is intentional as a message, a strong message about the seriousness of this issue, and making sure that we're all united on this, especially because Dane County has had the highest rate of infection within the state, and The last information to come out as of approximately 3 o'clock this evening is that they suspect that there is community spread, which is a trigger word within emergency management that's happening here in Dade County. So the level of seriousness has gone up. With that being said, a couple of things that the declaration does do is it allows for indirect village resources to respond to this issue. Right now, we do not, that I know of, have a case in the village of Cross Plains, not know it. But should that happen, we want to be able to react quickly to it. And then lastly, it does satisfy the prerequisite to obtain reimbursement from FEMA under the President's Declaration under the staff related. And so, as Jay had mentioned, already communicated with staff to track your time and costs associated with this issue. We don't yet know or have clarification on how, when this trickles down from the federal government, how the reimbursement scale is going to look like. From my experience, personal experience with FEMA and the village's experience with FEMA just recently, it could be a frustrating process. And so the more information, the instruction was, you know, even if you think it doesn't matter, write it down, record it, because it may matter. And so my recommendation is that the village board authorize the village president in declaring this state of emergency. The document is in your packet. This one was reviewed by our village attorney, and it reflects almost to a T what the county's declaration states.
And if I can just add, the attorney for the League of Municipalities today basically stated that she felt there's no reason not to do it. And if you choose not to do it, you should clearly be accounting for all your costs on that. Those are the two, which is very similar to what Bill said with that. So that was their recommendation too. Bill?
So, I just have one issue. I don't know if I'm comfortable giving a person the ability to declare an emergency within the village. I'd rather the trustees do that as a whole, rather than a individual person. If I read that right, we'd be giving that right to the village president.
No, well,
That's true. We are authorizing the village president, according to this, right? I just assumed that was something in statute, but I don't know if it is.
Yes, the statute states that by ordinance or resolution, that either the village president can declare or the village board can declare. In an instance, and we asked this question too with the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, in a situation where there's ample time for the village board to declare or to direct for the village president to declare, you can do so. There's obviously going to be certain situations where the village president will have to declare, then it would then come back and have to be ratified by the village president. And so there's
see, I guess I read the last sentence. I thought the board was doing it.
Right, no, yeah, the whole thing says,
Well, even if you read our ordinance, I think even if the board, if the board does it or I do it, the power still ends up with the president, no matter who declares it. And that, the reason for that is so you don't have to bring the board back if things are fluid. That's how it declared. I thought this, when I read it, I thought it was the board, because it says this resolution approved by the Village of Cross Plains Board of Trustees. And Bill is correct, no matter what is decided, the board always can rescind it. And if you read our ordinance, and that's under That's under chapter 12. It says that the president or the village board can declare an emergency for the village. But either, no matter who does it, it looks like the president is the one that has the power to make decisions in a timely way. And if I'm not here, then it's the director of emergency government. Well, I'm going to let Lori and then Tim.
My concern is if Jay wouldn't or Bill didn't have it and we would all have to get together again, what if half of us are ill and can't get together? Right?
Yeah, you're right.
So
It's
by
sick.
having us have to declare it, right, as the board,
As a
That's-
quorum, yeah.
yeah, that could be asking for a lot when we're talking sickness. And then what would happen? You know?
I would probably declare.
I just feel like,
Yeah, I want to get Tim in, because I know he was in
Yeah,
emergency
just-
management for many years.
Yeah, with the county, and I'm trying to remember, it's been a while, but I think the president can declare this emergency whatever it is, whether it's tornado comes through at midnight and we need him to declare it for certain things, but then the board has to meet within so many days to adopt that resolution, and that's when you can kind of battle out whether it's gonna be an emergency or not. And I don't know if that's what it says or if it's changed since I did it, but I'm pretty sure what it used to be anyways was the president declares an emergency because of what just happened, and the board has to ratify his decision through your ordinance and whatever, so just my 2 cents when I remember all of that.
So the statute 323.11 states that the governing body of any local unit of government may declare by ordinance or resolution an emergency existing with the local unit of government whenever conditions arise by reason of a riot or civil commotion, a disaster, or an imminent threat of disaster that impairs transportation, food or fuel supplies, medical care, fire, health, or police protection, or other critical systems of the local unit of government. The period of emergency shall be limited by the ordinance or resolution to the time during which the emergency conditions exist or are likely to exist. So that gives the authority to the local unit of government. And then if you jump over to the resolution here, the resolution to declare is being authorized by the village board, authorizing and directing the village president to execute the resolution. That's what the resolution states.
Yeah, so I was gonna say that, I mean, this resolution, I didn't see really gave a whole bunch of powers to the president, except to declare the resolution. Now, what's in the ordinance specifically?
Well, but you have to now jump to the ordinance of executive power in the state statute.
Which is, okay, never mind.
Yeah, I don't have that
So,
memory.
but
So the whole reason you do this is so you can quickly react without having to get the board together and vote. You can deal with things immediately, and then basically what happens is then the board gets together and they can rescind it. So that's the whole idea of this, is that it gives much more efficiency in getting things done in an emergency situation. So decisions can be made in a very timely manner. And it just so happens, most of them are given to the mayor or the village president. Okay, Lee,
Do I understand
then
right?
Bill.
I mean, resolution declaring a state of emergency. Are we saying that if we pass this, the state of emergency then is in effect?
Correct.
And then that gives the president the power to do what kinds of things are necessary to,
For let's say, what if all of a sudden there was 6 cases of it here? I could declare that people have to stay in their home.
but you're
and
saying,
not be on
we
the sidewalk
passed
and
this,
not drive their car.
Well, I don't know, I have to read on.
That's what it says in the resolution that you're declaring.
but
Well, no, that's not, this is not, In here, this is not in effect right away.
I understand that, but it gives you the ability to say,
Right.
people can't walk on the sidewalk or drive their vehicle within the village.
Well, that could be one of the things. But
That's what it says in here, Jay.
I know, Bill, but it's gotta be reasonableness. We're certainly not gonna tell people they can't drive or walk for no reason, right?
So,
You know, again, I come from a line of work that we do this every day.
I get it.
Police have the authority to declare emergency almost any time. We shut down streets, we shut down businesses, we have that power, right? So I don't see it as where all of a sudden I'm gonna be the dictator of Cross Plains and do all kinds of stuff. What we're gonna do is respond to this disease. If you guys don't want to do that, that's fine. I think it's a mistake. I think everybody is recommending that you do this, and I guess you have to have some level of trust that I'm not going to turn this into a police state, and we're gonna respond to whatever basically the county and state says.
I'm not saying don't pass this.
Okay.
Because I think it's important that we do it, but I want to make sure that the language is clear, and I want to make sure that we all understand what we're saying in here. And I'm looking at the ordinance that you were talking about in 1205, it's talking.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the
No, I am
resolution.
talking about the resolution, but you referenced the ordinance that we had, and it defines declaration of emergency as warnings and action,
Yep.
and they're different.
Mm-hmm.
Now, between the warnings and the action, when we're declaring an emergency based on the resolution that we're talking about, are we talking about it as a warning, or are we talking about it as an action?
Well, it would be an action,
Okay.
because we're in that right now.
So that says,
Yep.
the emergency management organization shall take the action in accordance with the emergency management plan only after the declaration of emergency and the issuance of official disaster warnings. Such state of emergency shall continue until terminated by the issuing authority, provided that such declaration is not issued by the governor, may be terminated at the discretion of the village board.
Correct.
That's the action. The warnings you can give. The action does not specify the village president.
You're reading our village ordinance.
I'm reading our village ordinance.
It says emergency under warning, emergency by the governor, by the village president, or the director in the absence of the village president.
That's for warnings.
Okay, I thought that's what you said.
Right, for warning, you can give a warning. You can absolutely give a warning. But the action is not under your jurisdiction. That is under the village board. That's B of that declaration.
Well, you're reading it very different. I think you have the right to terminate it, but you're not taking the action. The action you can terminate, yes. The board can terminate any action that the president does.
So I think this comes back to the original intent here. So the action is to pass the resolution. So in this situation, a situation where a warning declaration has been issued, it would need, by the village president, it would need to be ratified by the village board.
Right.
That's the action. Here, because it's not, the reaction in the proclamation for the declaration of emergency for this specific issue is not emergent as a quick reactionary in preparing for it. The action here in adopting the resolution is you're doing it kind of in reverse. So basically, you're providing the authority for him to declare the emergency declaration, and along with that, the powers listed then in the resolution. That make sense?
And this is just for the COVID-19. 60 days. Yeah, this is just for the next 60 days we're doing this.
This is for COVID-19 for 60 days.
Yes. So it's not like this is going on forever.
No, and you guys can
I'm understanding.
terminate anytime, leave.
Basically, based on what you're saying is, action-wise, this resolution does give the president, passing this resolution would give the president those powers that are identified as action in the village ordinance. Am I reading that right?
That's what I believe it does. It gives the authority for not only the ordinance, but also state statute under executive powers.
Okay, now what about, I'm curious about the 60 days.
That's just written in here.
Kind of
Generally, the state, if I remember state law, you have to end it as soon as the emergency's over. So if in 21 days, the governor and the county lift their state of emergency, then we have to lift ours.
Okay.
Is it automatic, or do we have to do it by action?
Well, I think I have to terminate it, or you guys can, or the board does it. I'm not really, I'd have to look. I haven't, it's very complicated right now. Go ahead.
So I just was wanting, just for clarity, because there's some, you know, so what are the options? The options are either we we approve the resolution for J, or what is the alternative?
Well, the alternative is we go as is without one, and then if there's, I'm not gonna be afraid to do it. I'll declare one
But we can,
later.
is this the only way that you can declare the emergency?
So you can declare, so the village president can declare an emergency, and that would be the warning. Then it would need to be ratified at the next village board meeting by the village board of trustees.
So I guess I'm just wondering, what are we choosing between? Either it says at the bottom J. Langfeld or village board trustees? What is the,
No, this here is giving the authority, you're telling me to declare an emergency,
yeah.
okay?
But the question is, what does that mean for what powers it gives you?
It has to do with, totally with the virus. So, I mean, the one example I could say is, they recommend that we ask everybody to stay in their home. So we would make a declaration that people have to be in their home for 14
But
days.
that would come from you instead of the board.
Right, and then you would have, if you didn't like it, you get a board meeting together and you rescind it.
I don't have it there, we were all stuck at home.
Well, I would make an exception.
Well, it actually has an exception in here already.
Okay.
Where's the,
So,
so I guess my question is there an alternative?
The alternative, we don't declare and we
No
wait
emergency.
until I feel there's an absolute need and then I declare.
So in order to do a resolution declaring state of emergency, we have to have one person designated.
Yeah,
And so,
well, you would want to designate it, I think you can designate as many as you want, but as far as making an executive decision to react to emergency situations, you want one person making that decision.
oh, okay. I just want to make sure I was
And what if
understanding.
Jay goes down? Hopefully not.
I would imagine it would go to Judy since she's the vice president.
That's not in this document.
that's true.
No, but she would take the role of president until, I'd have to read on that, but right now, and that's another thing we're supposed to have 2 people designated, we have 1. But she would take the role and then we'd have to follow whatever ordinances on how you get a new president. You'd probably do a special election or someone here would, I'm not sure how it's done. I just haven't, there's a lot of
But it's not
laws
in
and
this
stuff.
ordinance. Yeah. It's not in section 12.
No, this is only on emergency management, Bill.
So, again, I don't have a problem passing this, okay? So that's not my argument. I'm just
No, I
talking about
understand.
language, right? So I would really like to see in here, if it's even feasible, and I'll take direction from Bill on this, is, if an action is taken by, if an emergency action is taken by the village president within a certain time frame, 40 hours, 24 hours, whatever, the village board gets together and ratifies it, or whatever the case may be, I don't know, is that,
So that's language that I had in there before, in that, if, so the language I had in before was that Jay declare it, and then it come at the next board meeting to be ratified by the village board. That's the original language, that's the language that was in there with the Dane County. I sent that for review from Paul.
Yeah.
Paul sent it back saying, in accordance to 323.1 state statute, because we are, assuming that we are meeting tonight on this issue, it makes sense to have the board authorize him with the resolution now, instead of waiting, so after the meeting, he would declare, and then it will come back to the village board at the next meeting to approve.
But I think what he's looking for is, let's say I make a ruling, he would like some time period when the board has an opportunity to get together to discuss it. Fine.
Mandated,
It's
yeah.
gotta be, well, you can't do a mandate because you need a quorum. So what happens when you don't have a quorum and you have a mandate? So I think what you have to say is, in 24 hours it might be too short, because you need to notice 24 hours.
Right.
That would be pretty hard to do, and you figure people are gonna have to call around to see if what date people are available to meet.
Just
Okay.
add that verbiage, can that be added?
Well, the question is, what's the verbiage, if it says in there 48 hours, are you all willing within 48 hours to meet?
72? I don't
If
know.
it's,
Well-
if it's an emergency and we're keeping people from driving on the roads or walking on the
Okay.
side, yes, I would.
Yeah.
Okay.
My thinking about the 48 hours is, do we have to have a quorum? Because what happens
Yes.
if people are sick?
And my thing is,
Fine,
what if
that's
all
all
are
I'm worried
sick?
about. And it's only for
You
this
know?
one particular item, it's
And-
not for any more.
It would have to be, yeah, for this item, it's gonna be pretty severe for him to have to call something, to make that.
I agree, but I just want us protected, that's all I'm asking for. And if we're sick, right? But if we're not, then I think the board's responsibility is to have a check on the village president, regardless of the village
Absolutely,
president.
Well, I think you can do that anyways. I mean, you could, so this resolution is authorized by the village board. It's adopted by the village board.
Right,
You can recall a resolution at any time.
That's true.
By calling a special meeting of the village board.
right,
and even in ordinance, it says that you can do that.
that's true.
So the only really difference thing, what's happening here is the system is just being flipped. Instead of it coming to the board and then being voted on and done, it's gonna be in place, and then you're gonna vote to see if you wanna continue it or you're okay with it. And the key there is the timing. It's much easier for Bill and I to get something in place than trying to get a meeting together and get it passed when time could be very critical on this. And that's why you do it.
I get that.
So,
And I get that, but I mean, so we don't put an hour on, we don't put 48 hours or 72 hours, but as soon as possible, or some language like that.
yeah, that's-
You know, the next board meeting may not be scheduled for another 4 weeks. And I would want to meet prior to that as a village board to have this discussion with the village president.
I think potentially we're gonna be meeting
That's
once a month,
perfect.
but Lee,
Okay, one thing to remember, I think, this resolution only applies, in other words, this is not a broad brush thing, this is applies to COVID-19. It's the only situation that this thing applies to, and so, giving the president, I mean, the board could still meet and rescind. It
Anything I do.
might have to figure out the time frame, but, I mean, however it was, you could call a board meeting and rescind this
And also,
declaration, and since it's really only COVID-19, I could say, I guess
it's not even that you have to rescind this, you could rescind whatever decision I make.
Well,
As
it's not
an
the
individual.
resolution itself, but the decisions that you make.
and I wanna just note that in regards to posting and public meetings, in an emergency situation, you can post within 2 hours.
No.
Oh,
Okay,
2 hours?
that's good to know.
I didn't know.
That's good to know.
Like if it happened on a Saturday, we still wouldn't do it on Sunday, or does it have to be?
You can
during
do
the
it
week?
anytime, as long as you post it.
Okay,
Okay,
good to know.
let's do it.
Okay, I will make the motion that we adopt a resolution declaring of a state of emergency and allowing our president, Jay Lenko, to to sign.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussions or questions? All right, I have a motion on the table and a second.
Roll call on that.
Yeah, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Zander,
Yes.
trustee Fairwell,
Yes.
trustee Lucius,
Yes.
trustee Sorensen,
Yes?
trustee Calhoun,
Yes.
trustee Brosius,
Yes.
and President Langfeld.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Just for your information, Bill and I are going to do a letter to the citizens explaining this the best we can and just talking about where we are with dealing with this, just to keep them informed. We'll post it and we'll probably send it out all on our serve listers. But if you have one, if you can also pass it around, so most of the citizens, because there is a lot of fear out there. The few phone calls I've gotten, there are some really scared people, and if you visit the grocery store I did on Monday, it was just amazing to see the empty
The
shelves.
produce was gone.
I know, even the lettuce, which is shocking, but I mean, they're rationing toilet paper to 2 things, so there's fear out there, so we need, as the board, to be leaders, and it's serious, but we gotta keep it in balance, so